The butter that was added when we initially cooked it got absorbed by the squash itself, adding that whole other layer of richness. I'm Michael Magliano, otherwise known as Chef Mags. I am opening up a restaurant in downtown Los Angeles. It's a plant-forward concept called Gusto Green. Today we're going to be preparing a roasted delicata squash with rapini, sprouted wild rice and pumpkin seeds, using, of course, Miyoko's European-style cultured vegan butter. All right, so cut this top little part off, and then I cut a little bit on the bottom too. Cut it lengthwise. Now these seeds are gonna get scooped out. I love the delicata squash because the skin is tender. You don't have to peel it. It makes a great vessel for stuffing. Now we're taking our prepared squash that's been scooped of the seeds. We're gonna add a few knobs of Miyoko's cultured vegan butter. Miyoko's butter works just like animal dairy butter as far as its caramelization properties. But we're also using it to add a little bit of flavor just in the initial roasting of the squash, with the idea and intention that the squash ends up, absorbing some of this beautiful richness. We'll add a little bit of sea salt. This butter is salted. It doesn't need that much extra. And then we're gonna transfer it over to a pan. And then I add a little bit of water just in the bottom of the pan to help out with the process of essentially steaming. Put it on top, and then it's ready for the oven. 375 that we preheated earlier. All right, 45 minutes or until tender. So our delicata squash is in the oven roasting away. And while that's going, we're gonna finish up a little bit more of this mise en place. I'm gonna start by getting the base of our filling, which is this beautiful rapini. This is very, very tender rapini. It can literally be eaten raw. Sometimes you find that it's a little bit more fibrous and has to cook a little longer, but I'm just going to pare it down a little bit. I do go all the way down to the stem, especially with this particular one, because it is tender and I do like a little bit of that crunch. I got some garlic. It's already peeled. I like the look, to be honest with you, of a nice sliced garlic, so that's where I'm just going to slice it. And then I have my shallot that's peeled. I'm going to take it cross-cut horizontally, and I'm going to do one more in there. And then we're going to cut it the other way now. So we have a nice, essentially a brunoise. A brunoise is a French term for, I think it's maybe like a millimeter by a millimeter cube, where we're not really mincing it. We're not really just chopping it to anything. It has a little bit more uniform look to it. All right, so it's been about 45 minutes. Our timer just went off. I'm gonna pull the squash out of the oven. Okay. Tender all the way through, the skin's edible and tender as well. We accomplished what we wanted to do. And you could also see that the butter just got absorbed into the squash, creating that extra richness that we wanted. Part of the prep can be done ahead of time. We all get busy and sometimes we like to step things out in the process. This is definitely one of those things that I would just do the day before, and then that way it's ready to go. Now, if you did want to roast this the day ahead, just make sure that you pull the squash out of the refrigerator from the night before. So when we go to our next step of actually putting a nice caramelization on it, that it heats a little bit more evenly. Let's make that filling we've been talking about. I'm gonna turn this pan on medium-high heat. Miyoko's cultured vegan butter here. We're just getting this pan prepared to roast the squash to add a little extra caramelization. So I can see that this butter is nice, starting to foam nicely, which allows me to add the squash back into the pan. So I'm gonna just do the face down side of it. And again, the squash has already been cooked, so we're really just trying to create a little extra flavor, allowing this butter to work its magic. Those little brown bits are actually helping the squash caramelize the natural sugars in it, but it's also becoming more nutty in flavor. I think we're looking pretty good. I'm gonna take a calculated guess that our squash is probably starting to brown nicely. If the butter is starting to go a little too far, you could actually add a little bit more butter to it to cool the butter down. I'm gonna do a quick turn on it. Look at that. So golden brown and delicious, right? I don't need to play around with it too much on the other side. I'm gonna take these out of the pan and set them aside where they'll stay warm for a few minutes. Use a piece of foil or a cover just to keep it warm. Really happy where we're at right there. You can see we have a little bit of brown butter in there. I do want a little bit more because it's delicious. I'm gonna take our shallots, add that to the pan, about a tablespoon or so. Let that kind of get in there, and that brownie will also caramelize these shallots pretty quickly. I'm gonna add some garlic. Nice light roast on the garlic. I can smell those shallots and garlic too. It all cooks fairly quick, especially because the butter already being somewhat brown. So it looks like we're good there. I'm gonna add the rapini into this. And again, this rapini is very, very tender. This isn't gonna take more than a minute of sauteing. I'm gonna add Vadouvan, which is like a masala curry. It's actually French derivative. Got a lot of caramelized shallots and garlic and onion, and then it has turmeric, fenugreek, coriander, a few other things in there. It's just a beautiful, very fragrant, flavorful spice. I'm going to add my sprouted wild rice. We activated it by soaking it overnight a few days ago, and then we replaced the water for a few days to open up, which is making it more bioavailable, and our bodies are ready to take it on. We're adding some sprouted pumpkin seeds. I'm gonna add a little seasoning, a little salt. I'm gonna add a splash of sherry vinegar, which is gonna bump up the acidity just a tiny bit. I don't add this too much in the beginning because I wanna keep the greens very green. A touch of maple, just add a little sweetness. And then our last addition is gonna be a couple pomegranate seeds, and then we'll use some more of those to garnish. That's it. We're ready to stuff the squash. All right, so I'm gonna see how we did, give it a little taste. I really like how the nuttiness of the butter is playing with the sweetness from the maple and the acidity from the sherry vinegar and the fragrant qualities of the Vadouvan. That butter is really creating a nice median to capture all of this today. All right, so our filling's ready to be stuffed inside the squash. I did have this cultured cashew cream that I made with probiotics. This is really just soaking cashews overnight and then pureeing them with more fresh water, a little salt, and adding a couple pills of probiotics to it and fermenting for like 8 hours, which adds a little bit of sourness. I did add a little bit of the Vadouvan spice as well to kind of emphasize that flavor that I was wanting. And then I'm just gonna take a little bit of this, add a little extra layer of creaminess in there. And then add a little extra garnish on there. Pomegranate seeds, people want to see that on top. Maybe a couple of pumpkin seeds to kind of let it show. And then I have some fresh dill, which I love herbs. I love the freshness it adds to the actual dish. There's something to just adding a couple herbs to a dish to finish that kind of, brings that freshness about. There we have it. So we have our roasted delicata squash with rapini and sprouted wild rice and Vadouvan butter. So I'm ready to dive in here and give it a try. The butter that was added when we initially cooked it got absorbed by the squash itself, adding that whole other layer of richness inside the squash. Super happy. I hope you guys at home can enjoy this just like I am today.